Welcome, everyone, to Prime Time with Nate Smith and Blake Timmons. I'm going to bring them in here in just a second, but I want to thank everybody for being here today. We got a great show. I'm really excited about what these two guys have to say. They're going to talk a little bit about the cost of losing freedom. And in today's environment and climate, we're losing a lot if we're not paying attention. So I'm going to bring in Nate now. What's up, Nate? How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well myself. Excited to see you today and to get Blake in here with us. But I'm going to let you start talking a little bit about what you guys are going to talk about today, and then you bring Blake in with you, okay?
Absolutely. So there's been a lot of talk in maybe not so much the mainstream news, but just been floating around this idea of a cashless society. I don't know if you've heard anybody talk about it. And on the surface, when I first heard about it like 5 years ago, and on the surface you think, well, okay, that's great. It didn't really make a difference. And a lot of us operate cashless anyways. We have our debit cards, we have our credit cards. Hopefully we don't spend our credit cards or use them very much at all, if ever. But this idea is starting to get a little momentum. And I was looking up, just some general pros and cons of this concept. And the reason I want to bring this up today, we're not going to sit on this concept very long, but as Lennon talked about, the cost of losing freedom. So there's a lot of things that happen in society. We have a great country that was founded as a republic on the idea of law and order. And we have those laws protected through the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. We have really a democratic voting style, but a republic in terms of our law and order. And so how we keep that republic intact is through maintaining our rule as the people. The people that we give the government consent in certain areas to govern accordingly to our demands. At least that's how it's supposed to be. Now, what has happened in society is, a lot of those freedoms have slowly chipped away. They've slowly eroded, and a lot of that is based on kind of our acceptance and apathy, in a sense, unawareness of things that are happening. And so I bring this up today, and we're not going to talk too much about it in depth, as is it a reality? Could it ever happen? Whatever the case may be. But I want to use it as an example then to springboard into areas where I think we are more blind to the freedoms that we're giving up personally, not so much in conjunction with the government or our country, but just our own life, our own pursuits, our own desires, our own ability to have what we want, to get what we want, to be where we want to be. And so just taking a look at some of the pros and cons. Now, it's interesting to me because the moment I heard this concept the first time, that I didn't think there were any pros. And I'll just give you a spoiler alert. I still don't think there are, but I'm going to read you this list of pros. So a cashless society would reduce the risk of violent crime. It reduces tax evasion. It's harder for criminals who rely on cash payments, quicker transactions and shorter queues, shorter lines. Better hygiene, supposedly. I guess that's, money's supposedly super dirty. Reduce worthless spare change. I don't know why spare change is worthless. It has a worth to it. Cash imposes cost on banks and firms. The last one I don't think is that important at all, because ultimately, it's the people that are the ones that are supposed to be profiting and gaining access and fungibility, which is a big word for just being able to interchange money or monetary currency, whether it be precious metals or actual cash, whatever the case may be. So I don't think that's a very good reason. The cons, supposedly people lack access to bank accounts and credit cards. Not very many. Privacy issues, government gains more control over citizens. We'll come back to that one. Cash helps households manage finances. Very true, especially if you're a Dave Ramsey guy. You have your cash envelopes out there. That would be very tricky. And then freedom to choose would be taken away. So that's a big one. So really 2 and 4 are really big. Cash has intrinsic and emotional value, and e-currency or e-cash does not. So I want to start there. And, for the people that really are kind of dig into economic history, the first thing to say, well, cash isn't actually money anyways. And that's very true. It's not based on anything. If you know a little bit of history about our currency, it used to be based on the gold standard up until I think 71, when Nixon kind of took us off that standard. We had some of the largest reserves of gold that we got through, funding other countries during World War II, exchanging currency for gold. So we had a very strong backing. So that currency that we have used to be able to, you go in the bank and say, hey, you could literally get a $20 worth of gold by turning in your $20 note. It was a dollar for dollar or a value for value comparison. And we've lost a lot of that. The dollar has devalued, and we don't have time to go into the reasons for all that. But this next evolution or de-evolution, in a sense, of attempting to move to a cashless society, I think is a huge step in the wrong direction. Because one, let's just focus on the second one we talked about. Privacy issues, government gains more control over citizens. So right now, in your bank account, it says you have, let's say you have $1,000 in there, right? Well, you're relying on ones and zeros. You have binary money, basically. At any given time, that can be eradicated to zero, whether it be a hacking incident or the government, takes over and starts taking money out of your account. They already can do that for tax evasion and things like that, which, you argue whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But ultimately, right now, when I use my debit card, where I go, there's already tracking. There's tracking in our phones, tracking in our our cars, our nav system. And, not to sound like conspiratorial, bury yourself in a hole in the ground and, be a terrified of everything person, because I'm not. I don't live that way. I don't think anybody should. But there is a level of awareness that you have to have with what's going on around you. Perfect example. We talk a lot about, the coronavirus, and there's the big arguments, mask or no mask, or I'm not wearing a mask, or you don't care about people if you don't wear a mask, all these different things. But at the end of the day, a phrase that you hear a lot is, well, it better safe than sorry. Let's just make sure that we're okay. We want to be secure. We want to be safe. And there is a value to security, obviously. But I think one of the most maybe quoted but underappreciated things that ever came out of the founding era of our country was, and I'm roughly paraphrasing here, Benjamin Franklin, who said, if you're willing to give up your liberty or your freedom for perceived security, you will have none and deserve neither. So there is a cost to acquiescence of the status quo, to just accepting, well, here's what's happening. This is without putting in a lot of thought to it. Now, it's going to be frustrating because, we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about today, well, how do we solve that? What do we do if they try to move to a cashless society? The goal of that is a real life example of an opportunity to think through things yourself and determine why this may or may not be a good idea. Well, how does that apply to the overall arc of what we talk about on this show, which is finances, entrepreneurship? And the way that it connects is this. I talked about the freedoms and the privileges and the rights that we give up and that have eroded over time. And it's easy to look back from a societal standpoint and pinpoint, maybe where this went wrong, a particular legislative act, or, some 9/11, perfect example. A terrible terrorist attack happens, and out of fear, we enact the Patriot Act. Well, it seems good at the time, and I think we probably arrested a lot of terrorists because of that act. But man, that's a lot of power. That's a lot of freedom to give up to the government. And do we think about those things, right? So how does that transition into our daily lives? Well, we look big picture and we think, well, okay, yeah, that's great, Nate, and it's, I'll think about that more in detail. But how does that transition to my personal life? Well, I believe that as a society, as we have kind of set on the sidelines in some capacity and let some of these things slowly creep in, we have done that in our personal lives as well. And we've done that by what we've accepted and what we've settled for. The job that we have that we may or may not like, but we're just happy to have a job, the security, I got great benefits, or at least I can pay my bills, all these things that we say, that the security somehow trumps our desires, our freedoms, our maybe the things we wanted to do earlier in life that we've given up on. And the same way that our acceptance and indifference can erode our quality of life from a societal standpoint, the same thing can happen in our individual lives with our families and with our kids, our spiritual lives, whatever the case may be. So if we want to make the difference, we cannot be indifferent, right? So I want to talk about, I'm going to turn it over to Blake here and let him tell a little bit of his story. Just the way that he kind of decided that, I want to do something different. Blake's a very passionate guy. He's had a lot of passion in sports, coaching, pouring into people's lives. Well, how did that come about? And what was it that allowed him to step out of the corporate world? He talk a little bit about your experience with Nike too, because I think that's valuable in terms of how you got to where you are and the decisions that you made. So I know that was a huge, long intro, but I think it's going to be some really good stuff today.
Yeah, that was real good, Nathan. As far as your point on, you talk a lot about security and perceived security. I think it opens people up for a lot of personal growth and a change in thought when they come to the realization of this truth, that security does not exist in this life. And so you might as well take some risks, right? You might as well go for it. You might as well not chase security. You might as well live your life. And so those are, some of the conclusions that I came to in my journey that I didn't want, and, no matter, who it is with, specifically, I did some football marketing for Nike back over 10 years ago now, before all this stuff was going on. But all my friends ended up moving to Oregon one day. I didn't want somebody to have that kind of power over my life. I didn't want to move to Oregon. I wanted to stay right here. This is where my family is. I like doing what I'm doing, getting to, coach football and things like that part-time and have these hobbies. And so I did not want to give someone, to me, that is absolutely not freedom. And I didn't even, back then, I wasn't even thinking like we're talking about now that at this level, but I knew deep down, I was like, I'll be dadgummed if I give somebody else that much control of my life that they can uproot my entire family and move across the country where I don't know a soul. I don't want to give anybody that kind of power. I want to be able to be in control of my life in that way. And so, but I believe that, just going through the stages of freedom, I think that there is, in the land of the free, there is a whole lot of not free people. And so, and even people that I just want, as I'm going through this, I want you to think about this. Even if you are a lover of freedom, apply this to your own life if you're listening, and think about, am I really free the way that I think I'm free? And so going through the stages of freedom, there's 4 stages of freedom. And this is all encompassing. This encompasses the entire history of civilization. And so the first stage of freedom, the opposite of freedom, it's bondage. Right. And so now this could apply to American history. This could apply back, in the Roman Empire, all throughout history. Other people groups have been conquered by other people groups and put in bondage. There's all kinds of different examples of that. And so that's where the stages of freedom starts out. But eventually, these people get sick and tired of somebody else having all this control over their life. And they start to say things like, hey, life not free is not worth living. Give me liberty or give me death. Some common quotes that you've heard when people are fixing to start to go to war. So you have bondage, and then you have war or revolution, where people say, man, I want my freedom, right? Give me liberty, give me death. And so after that, if they go to war to win their freedom, then something great happens. The next level is called prosperity, because when men and women created by God are free to create and produce and innovate and to gather and invent, then this explosion happens where you take the chains off of people and they do what they are meant to do, and they do great things, and you have this amazing time of prosperity. And that could last, a long time. But eventually, as different generations and their children's children get here, and they had nothing to do with the winning of the freedom, the last stage in the freedom cycle is complacency. And so when you're in that complacent stage, people forget what it took to be free. And so there's probably specific examples as I'm going through those that you can think. Maybe you're thinking about American history. Maybe it applies to you as a person. And so if we go back to turn of the century, everyone was self-sufficient. Right, not the turn of this century, the turn, I guess, 2 centuries ago. I had to clarify that, in 1900, right? And so everyone's
turn of this century, everybody was panicking for Y2K.
Yeah, exactly.
Which never happened. So
right. So, but at the turn of 1900, turn of the 20th century, everyone's self-sufficient. They're farmers, they're blacksmiths, they run their own business. But eventually, the Industrial Revolution happens, and they need workers. They need people that, you know, they don't have to be all that educated, don't have to be all that skilled. They just got to do what they're told. They got to clock in. But how do you get people that own their own business to come and work for somebody else? They say, hey, you know, maybe you had a bad year on the farm, and we will pay your retirement. We'll pay for your health care. We'll take care of all these things, and you don't have to worry about it. And honestly, back then, that's for the farmer that just had a bad year. That looks pretty good to him, right? That's pretty good security at face value before you think about anything else. But so that generation ends up going into the factories and working, and they get taken care of. But then what happens? The next generation, they don't get taken care of quite as much. So they're saying, yeah, you know, we'll still give you some retirement, but you need to contribute to it a little bit. Yeah, we'll still give you health care, but you need to pay for that as well. Yeah, no, you're not going to be salary, you're going to be hourly, but you can work overtime if you want to. And it just kind of begins to slide downhill. And then you go to the next generation. That third generation has no idea what it means to be self-sufficient, right? They have no armor. They don't know how to battle. They are completely, you have created a dependent society that people want to go to these jobs, and they are chasing this security because they got no other way to survive. They're not self-sufficient. They're dependent. And now you'll hear people say, hey, at least you got a job, right? Because they want to be grateful for it. Or their boss will say, hey, you know, at least you got a job. I can fire your butt. And so that sounds horrible to somebody that can't go and do something else because they're dependent upon that job. And so, but now, so if somebody is in that situation, if you have to wake up and go to work to pay your bills, I would argue that you're not actually truly free, because you can't wake up and do whatever you want to. Not just, you know, the freedom to be lazy, the freedom to work when you want to go work, and the freedom to fish when you want to go fish. That's, you know, freedom. But so you're in that stage, you're kind of back in bondage if you think about it. What's the way out of bondage? War. But you don't know how to fight. You're dependent. You have no idea how to provide for your family without doing a service for someone else. And so that is, you know, the stages of freedom. And even, you know, guys, we were talking about this earlier, at the risk of being controversial, which, you know, we're going to offend everybody at some point in this days, but obviously not making light of the past sins of this country or the atrocities that, you know, different people groups have gone through in this country. And I'll even let's kind of take that out of it. But let's just say that today, if you're listening, imagine yourself a slave. I don't care what color, what people group you are, where you came from. Let's say you're in a position of a slave, and you are valuable to your owner. Let's say you have a good slave owner, and he needs to take care of your shelter, your food, and your clothes because you are valuable to him. Okay? But now let's fast forward and say you won your freedom. Whatever deal you guys made, now you are a free person. You're a free man. You're a free woman. And so now you don't have to work for free, but now that owner is going to pay you, right? He's not your owner anymore. He's your employer. And so now he comes and pays you. And so that takes care of the place you live and your clothes and your food, and you have no money left over at the end of that. What in the world is the difference between the two scenarios? I would argue that there's no difference. And so if that's where you're at in your life, where you are going to work to buy clothes and shelter and food, then I would argue to maybe start thinking outside the box a little bit, to go to war for your own freedom, and maybe look at some different avenues.
So I got a question for you, Blake, on that. I think that, and I love the analogy, and I think you're right on point. But I think some people would go, when you said, what's the difference in being a slave of an owner and being a slave of an employer? I think some people would say, well, the slave had no decision on being on the plantation or wherever that may be. Whereas a worker, you do have a choice So it's willingness versus unwillingness to be a certain place. But the thing that I would come back with, I just want to get your thoughts on that. But in thinking of it, do we really have a broad choice of where we work in this society where we're kind of slave to the business owner, to the employer? Because have we not been limited in our skill development based on our public education system? So I can go back around. I mean, that's kind of what I'm getting to. What are your thoughts on that? You or Nathan, either one?
Yeah, well, I mean, I absolutely agree with that. We have been trained from kindergarten through high school and even college how to work for somebody else, right? Not how to work for ourselves. And like I said, the way out of bondage is to fight, but we're not equipped to fight. Now, I would argue on the other deal, there's always a choice, right? The person in the slave position can run off the plantation if he wants to. The person in the employee position cannot go to work if they don't want to and not have any money to provide for their family. So there's choices all around. If you are a human being, then there are now whether the consequences of those choices can be very, very great.
But don't you think also, I mean, in the same sense, and I'm not trying to compare apples to apples here either, but at working for an employer, you don't run off of your job sometimes because you're not sure you could get another one.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have that confidence in yourself that you have the skill level or experience to get anything better than what you got. A lot of us have the mentality that, well, this is as good as it's going to get. This sucks, but I can't do anything about it. So that goes back to, we're not free. If that's our mentality, we're a slave to our own mind at that point.
Yeah. And I just want to, sorry. I appreciate you saying, because I feel like there's people out there like, okay, I mean, if we look at our history of, enslavement of African-American people, if we look at basically every people group in history has been enslaved at some point in their history. I'm sure the Israelites would be offended by Blake's statement. I don't know. But the point is, it's not the circumstances. I mean, obviously, anybody would trade a dead-end job for being would take a dead-end job over being an actual slave on a plantation.
Yeah,
but the mindset of control is the point that I think that Blake is
right.
getting on. That right. Yeah, I mean, your conditions are deplorable and awful in any society that has enslaved any group of people. But enslavement of the mind was still part of that physical slavery. And so, we go to our job day in, day out. And again, I can hear some people now just, oh, you should be grateful. You should be grateful. Always be grateful for what you have. But our experience, especially Blake and I think some of the other people that are on The Difference, having the other shows, I mean, the reason we got into business for ourselves is because we felt this way. We felt like, where I used to work, I love the people. The company does great things. It's absolutely a necessary service. And I hope, some of them might even be listening. So I don't have anything negative to say. At the end of the day, though, I just wanted more control over my own life. Now and I was in a good situation. I mean, I wasn't miserable at work or anything like that. I still have a lot of friends there. But some people, and I came to that conclusion that I wanted more control over my life. Some people sit through 25, 30, 40 years of a job that they hate because they don't know another way out. And sometimes there's not another way. I mean, or at least not the appearance of another way. I think that's what Blake and I really pride ourselves on, is being able to help people, especially in the financial realm, develop business skills and open a business for themselves in a way that they don't feel like they normally could, because we've got, great systems in place that allow the average person to succeed. But the biggest thing is that obstacle of, I think, Blake, you talked a lot about the cash flow quadrant, I think a couple shows ago, and I'm not going to talk about that, but specifically when people try to go into business for themselves, like one of the big barriers is, well, what am I going to do? Like, and Lynn, and that goes back to your point. Well, our education system is not teaching skills. It's not really skill based anymore. It's test based.
Well, it's also not teaching us how to be self-sustaining and independent.
Right.
Blake hit it right. It teaches us how to be dependent.
And the people that go out, we talk about jokingly, what if the zombie-apocalypse happens? I gotta have a place I can go and get off the grid, and those are always the crazy people. And obviously, I don't believe in zombies happening, but it's funny how many people, if something literally happened in this country where everything went to hell. I hope that never happens. I don't think it's going to happen. I pray it didn't happen. But so many people would be screwed because they don't have a skill set to operate independently. And it's
right.
And I'm not talking. I'm not. That's not exactly what we're talking about. But it goes back a little bit to that. Like, just okay. I'm gonna be sufficient on my own. Well, what do I do? Like, I know so many guys that can't fix normal little things. Like they can't operate a lawnmower, for goodness sakes. And I'm thinking, how are you? No wonder you're so dependent, because you have no skill set for life. And I know that may sound harsh, but I think exactly to your point, we are producing generations, and it's exactly what you said. The further away you get from the duration or the generation of self-reliance and self-sufficiency, Blake, each passing generation, if something doesn't happen, we're going to be more reliant and possibly dumber, but definitely more reliant. The movie Idiocracy came to mind. I hope that doesn't ever happen. But anyway, so I think you guys make great points.
Yeah, and I would even say, so we basically, we've painted this picture now of most of us aren't truly free because we're not really self-sufficient. We're dependent. And obviously on this show, we talk a lot about, the entrepreneurship aspect of it. So I would hate to paint this picture and then say like, well, good night, everybody. You're screwed. That's the point of the show.
See you out there. Great luck. Good luck to you.
So, and Nathan made a good point. That's why me and Nathan chose to do what we do. We didn't know, we went through that same academic system that taught us how to work for somebody else. But both within us had this more of an entrepreneurial spirit, the feeling of the true American spirit that was, this was built on entrepreneurship. Just had no idea how to execute upon that because we didn't have the tools to fight out of that situation. And so we were able to find something that gave us the tools to do that, took all the risk away, allowed us to start out part-time so we didn't have to leave our current income. And then after we had replaced that income, then we came on, full-time. And so obviously, if there's anybody out there in that situation, we'd love to share, specifically how we did it. I know it's not the only way. I know on this, on the whole different show, there's some great entrepreneurs that think outside the box. And so that's really what I would tell people. Just how are you thinking? How have you been trained to think? And are you thinking freely? If there's a way, or if there's been a thought in your mind about, man, this is just not the life that when I got out of high school, I had these big dreams and I just got hit square in the face and I haven't recovered since then. I've been doing something I hate for somebody I hate, with people that I hate. And I go to work in traffic every day and drive home in traffic every day. And it's just not the life I envisioned. I just want you to know that it doesn't have to be that way. And there is a way out. And this world we live in, there has never been a better time to become an entrepreneur. There's never been more tools to access to help you with the education on being an entrepreneur. There's never been more communication skills, right? If you're going to go into business, Magic Johnson said, if you're going to go into business for yourself, everybody needs to know what you do, And so we're live on social media right now. There has never been a better communication structure in place to start your own business right now. And so I know Dave Ramsey said recently, there's a lot of people that have, whether it's just income interruption, furlough, or been from their jobs, when they thought, I think it's 45 million right now, jobs that they thought were secure. The reason that they did that job is because of security. It turned out that it wasn't as secure, unfortunately, as they thought it was going to be. And so Dave Ramsey actually said, why would you go and search for another job right now? Why don't you try to start your own business right now, so you will never give anybody the power ever again to say, sorry, you don't work here anymore, and you become self-sufficient and you get out of the dependency and you gain the tools, to go to war, to fight out of that bondage, to win your prosperity. And so, and like I said, me and Nathan, we feel very fortunate to find the opportunity that we did, and to be able to help people with their finances, and to be able to create, financial independence, everyone we sit down with. And so we love sharing that message.
Well, one of the things I got a quick story I want to share. And I may have told you guys before, and other people may have heard it before too, but my first realization that the corporate world may not be the place for me was watching my mother, who was a nurse, get a job as a corporate nurse and work for a large defense company for almost 20 years. And obviously over that 20-year period of time, she had gotten raises and things had improved. And she really felt like that, that was her security. And everybody told her what a great job, you'll be there for as long as you want to be. Well, before the 20-year period was up, when she would have been eligible for full retirement, she was laid off and let go. And they did that for a couple of reasons. One is now they don't have to pay full retirement. Number two, now they can hire a younger nurse and pay them less and start that process all over again. And that's when I realized really quick that, wow, you really don't have control after all you've done for that company. And you've given your heart and soul, and you've been loyal to them for 20, or almost 20 years. And that's what they do. It's what they have to do for the company. I mean, that's just how companies do better, right? I mean, imagine having an employee base of 1,000 people, and every once in a while you can let some of the highest paid go and replace them with new people. And so at that point, I'm like, you know what? I don't trust people with my life like that. I don't want to put in almost 20 years and then be told that I'm useless, because by that time, what do you do? So that was where I decided that I'm going to figure out how to create my own destiny. And it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There's struggles along with it too, but it's good to know when I lay down every night and I get up every morning that I am in control. And if I am willing to do what it takes and figure it out, it can happen. Amen.
Yeah, that's a great, horrible story, but a great example of, what we're talking about. I would hope that somebody, would be able to tell that nurse what's going to happen to her in 20 years after she gives her life away to that company, and they're going to fire her right before she gets her retirement.
Yeah. You might want to start looking for a new job around the year 18.
Yeah. And I want to say this too, because there's a lot of people that, maybe they're listening and they've already retired. They spent 30 years in a job. And like my dad, for instance, my dad's been retired for 6 or 7 years now, worked for FedEx for 30 years and provided a great life for us. I don't think he'd probably tell you he didn't love it. It wasn't the funnest thing ever, but he did it. And, I don't want to diminish the people that are out there that have been in a career and retired and work their butt off to take care of their family. I mean, that is, right. That is a winning attitude. That is exactly what we need more of. But I think specifically for the millennial generation, maybe some Gen Xers, I claim Gen Xity because that's not really a word, but I'm close to on that borderline. Gen Xity, yeah, sounds good.
Is that like immunity from being a millennial?
I think so. That sounds good. But the average millennial, I think, changes jobs every 2 or 3 years, and it's almost like this generation is looking for the next thing, but they're looking for it to be fulfilled in a job or a title or a corporation. And I'm not here to demonize any job. I think, Lyndon, the story you told about, not so many people that they get ready to go to retirement, they get screwed by their corporation or whatever. And we talked a lot about this a couple of shows ago. The corporation has a bottom line, and it's you might have great leadership. They might really care for you, but at the end of the day, they're beholden to someone else, which is the shareholders. Occasionally you'll find a great small business owner that really does care about his people. He wants to take care of them. He wants to pay them well, wants to make sure they get retirement. There's some great situations out there. So I don't want you to feel like, we can't eradicate all employees. We can't eradicate all corporations. We don't want to do that. The society would fall apart. But I just know, and if anything has told us that there's no such thing as security or ultimate security, it's got to be the last 4 or 5 months. I mean, we have to realize that there are other options out there. And, just starting your own business is not going to solve all the problems. We talk about that as an option. So, immediately when you start your own business, well, what are you free from? Well, you're free from a boss, and you're free from the decisions that your company makes. So all those are on your plate. Now you still have to get up and work and do some things until you have a business system in place that works itself. And then that's when you ultimately move to that, where you're about as free as you can be. You can literally wake up, do whatever you want. That's what people go for. There is a transition process. So I don't want to look like, and I doubt anybody's, hopefully no one's thinking we're saying this, but just waking up and starting your business, man, it is hard. And there's sometimes risk. There's different obstacles. I think, like Blake mentioned, we're very appreciative of the vehicle that we found. Like you said, if you want to know more about that, we'd love to talk to you offline a little bit. But there's always going to be hard work. There's always going to be sacrifice in whatever you do. The key is the return on that investment. If you're pouring everything into your business, to your well-being, and you're putting it all on you, yeah, that can be terrifying. It can be scary. There is a certain relief about just showing up and punching a time card, and here comes a check every 2 weeks, until that check doesn't come anymore. So there's always obstacles. There's always fears. There's always things to overcome. But the question is, do you want to be able to take those things into your own hand, or just rely that a system, an economy, someone else that you may never meet, you may never know, is going to have that control in your life? And that takes us back to the very beginning about the Cashless Society, but more about what we've been talking about with business. And so I think if you come away thinking, okay, I get that, I hear what you're saying, but I really do enjoy my job. I feel like I'm making a difference. I'm making good money. Hey, maybe that's where you need to be. I think God puts us in certain places that we need to be in.
Right.
Stay there. I mean, I hope all of our ministers don't quit and start their own business, because we would need some ministers. Maybe they could teach ministers how to, I don't know. So again, this is not a sweeping societal solution. It's just options for people that we hear all the time just say, man, I want more. I'm miserable. There's got to be something else. And we want to give you hope that there is.
Right. Well, and I think that, I was just taking some notes, but like you said, Nathan, if you're happy, that's really all that matters. If you get up every day and you look forward to where you're going and you enjoy it. Nathan, you talked about having a job that you really enjoyed, and all the people around you really enjoyed, and you felt like that you had a purpose, but then you felt like that there was something more that you wanted to pursue. And that's one of the things that both of you have done and are talking about, that there, Blake, as you were saying, some people feel like they're stuck. They're stuck at that job. I can't get another one. I don't have the confidence that I have the skill set to go out, put my resume out and improve my situation. But it's not hopeless. It's not hopeless for those people, because we all have some sort of skill level, and all we have to do is get around the right people that will help us identify those specific skills and then maximize on that. And that's where, sometimes when you are in the corporate world and you're in that corporate umbrella, and all the people that, we talk about, you're the sum of the 5 people that you hang around, right? Well, that kind of goes with the same place that you work. Would you agree? I mean, if you're working with a lot of people that aren't happy with where they are, and there's not a good environment where they are, it's hard to get excited about going to work every day.
No, absolutely. I think, what I've seen, and obviously, we're speaking generally, you guys have made the point, obviously, some people are happy, and that's great. We just know that we hear from people all the time that aren't. And there, man, you just see so much negativity, right? And to the point where, what me and Nathan do, man, we are surrounded by positivity. And so when I ended up, if I'm talking to some of these people about what we do, and I come across as, very positive and believing in what I'm doing and things like that, I heard, oh, you've been brainwashed. And so I always say, man, if thinking positive is what you call brainwashing now, then wash the crap out of my brain, because wash all that negativity away, because man, it can be, both things are contagious, right? The way people think, their mindsets and their attitudes are so contagious. And so, yes, if I'm going to work every day and I'm surrounded by people that are just clocking in, and they're just there to get a paycheck, and they're good, hardworking people, but they've just kind of been, for a horse racing term, they've kind of been gelded a little bit. If you people know what that means, right? They started out as this, this stallion, this thoroughbred, and eventually they get gelded, or for a what would be the dog term?
Neutered.
They got neutered, right? And they don't quite have. They've been the dreams that they once had are suppressed, and they just accepted it. And so, if somebody's in that situation where deep down they still have some dreams, but they're not allowed to dream them anymore, even though if that dream was placed in you by God, I believe it was for a reason. But at some point, we just had to settle, and for honorable reasons, to take. I can't do that anymore. I got to take care of my family, right? And that's at some point, I had to stop pursuing the NFL, right? But
you found another dream, though. That's the difference.
Do what?
You found another dream. That's the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I love about this. But I can know, my dream I found out was not necessarily to play professional football, as much as I love football and, wanted to do that since I was a kid. My dream was to impact as many people in a positive fashion. The biggest part of that was just proving that you're capable of doing it, and so me and Nathan love proving to other people that, hey, your life doesn't have to be this way. All that stuff that you dreamed of when you were in high school and coming out of college, still right in front of you, still change your life.
Well, Blake, sometimes our true dream, because I had the same dream you had. I wanted to play pro football, but just too short, and a lot of other things. But for most of us, our dream is just to have the opportunity to pursue our dream, whatever that dream is, and they do change. But having the opportunity to pursue it is what brings life within us. And to get back to kind of, I want to share a football story that Blake and I experienced, and he don't know I'm about to say this, but we had my final year of coaching in 2008. We had a young man that transferred into the school, and he basically was third or fourth team from the school that he transferred from. He's a great track star, but he never got any opportunity to really play football at a starting level. And so the guy comes over to our school, and he was talented beyond belief. And this guy ended up going to the NFL because he transferred over, and he got around a group of people that were winners, and he got around a group of coaches that saw more in him and pushed him to do more, and ended up being the MVP of the Poinsettia Bowl. Played for Texas Christian, went on to the NFL to play for a couple of teams, and I think the Canadian Football League as well. From a person, now this is all in 1 year. This is from a senior year through college and the NFL. I mean, but had he stayed in the environment that he was in, he would have never even been a starter on the football team that he left. That's the power of having the positive people around you that can see your potential and help you get there.
Yeah, amen. That's a great example. That's that's life changing. We could talk about football all day. I always say, hey, Drew Brees wasn't Drew Brees until he got to New Orleans, right? So a lot of what you have this potential, a lot of actually making that potential become a reality is you surround yourself with, right? Because there's not a lot in this world that we can do on our own, right? That's the way God created it. He created us for relationships and community. And when you're surrounded by the right groups of people that are pouring positivity and truth into your life, you're capable of far more than you thought you were. And it's a completely different way to live. Obviously it was, life changing for same Sky Dawson. What's up, Sky? He's coaching track in Florida right now. Right.
He is.
I was just going to say too, and you kind of brought this up. What was the horse term that you used?
Gelding.
So that's synonymous with neutering. Yes. I don't think I've ever heard that term. Then again, I don't have a horse passion like you do, but
I already knew that term. Where I heard it in a story though? It was from Mike Tuttle, right? Mike Tuttle's a guy real successful in a business, lives out in East Texas, a mentor of ours. But he said he was sitting down with a group of people, and after he got up, his son was asking some questions about those people, and he's like, "Dad, that really doesn't seem like the kind of person you're necessarily looking for." And then Mike said, "Let me tell you about those couple guys right there. All right, they started off as stallions, but they got into the corporate world and they've been gelded. right? So they didn't, this thing that Mike was talking to him about, they didn't really believe anymore that it was even possible. They didn't believe that they were capable of doing that because, they got cut.
What it's if to make the medical analogy too, if you have a wound that starts to fester, or you get gangrene set in your one of your appendages and whatnot, there comes a point where you can save that appendage. Obviously circulation is the big thing that keeps that blood flow and oxygen, keeps the tissue alive and whatnot. But there comes a point where if you cut that off long enough, then you're going to end up losing that. And I think what happens to so many people is they cut themselves off from positivity. They cut themselves off from growth. They cut themselves off from challenging themselves, from setting goals. And at the end of the day, a chunk of them just falls off. It's their heart, their desire, their dream, whatever the case may be. And if you're not constantly, making sure, with our body, what do they always check when you go to the doctor? They check your circulation, your oxygen. Am I getting enough oxygen to all parts of our body? Well, for our heart and our spirit, the oxygen is, the people we're around, the new information that we're getting, the learning, the challenging ourselves that revitalize and reanimate our passions. And if we don't do that, then we start to decay, we start to fester. And, and again, like I said, you can be in a job for a long time and not fester because you are doing those things. Whether you have a business owner or you're in a job for a career for 30 years, those are things that you have to do as a human being. If you're not getting better at what you're doing, if you're not challenging yourself, if you're not setting goals within the confines of the job you're in, even whether you want to be a business owner or not, or whether that's what we're talking about today. But in general, you've got to have those things in life that revitalize and energize and help you, see the why to whatever you're doing.
Well, let me ask you guys a question real quick. And I want to go back to what Blake started the conversation with about when he was doing the comparison of being a slave to your job, to your employer. Isn't it advantageous for the employer for you in your own mind to feel like that this is as good as it gets and I might as well just stay here? Once you train a staff of 500 people, the longer you keep them, the better off that you are as the business owner, right? So you don't want them seeing what's going on outside in the other world and having a desire to experience that, right? If they just think, well, here it is, everybody's telling me I'm lucky to have what I have, then that's really good for that owner. And I'm not anti-capitalist, right? That owner went out and built what he's got. Good for him. And for the people like Nathan was saying that enjoy that job and love being there and feel like that's their purpose, that's awesome. But for the one that feels like that they have more inside of them than that, but they just don't know where to turn. That's what this show is about. Is to give you that pathway to go and find those opportunities.
And I just want to say, Sarah, what's our time like? We got about 5 minutes, looks like. I just want to say, 5?
Yep.
I'm not going to talk for 5 minutes. But I'm sitting here. I've never talked long. Just kidding. Except for the beginning and the middle of the show.
And he was using all those big words. Blake, did you hear that?
They weren't big. I thought those were regular words.
Oh, don't act.
I'll send you a thesaurus, Lyndon. Don't worry about it.
I
was just thinking, wouldn't it be great if we could help people to see the potential before they're in a job or before they're. I mean, I don't feel that old. Sometimes in the morning I do. I'm about to be 37. But you wake up and you're 45, 50 and you feel miserable and you don't know what to do. There's still plenty of time, plenty of opportunity. But what if we could teach people to see that in advance? So I'm thinking to myself, we talked a couple shows ago about college and we just mentioned it, Lyndon. You talked about the education system not being designed to really instill skill sets in people. And, we'll go to college and we'll get a degree in some sort of social or what am I trying to say? Cultural studies of some sort. And if that's a passion for you, I mean, go for it. Read, study. Promise you can just buy the books and read them all and not have to pay $50,000 for the education. But I would really caution if you're 16, 17, 18-year-olds, parents, man, really think through, because our society for a long time college was a stepping stone to a better job. That is no longer the case, unless for a few exceptions. If you want to become anything in the STEM field, if you're in science, technology, engineering, math, like if you're, I want my engineers to design buildings that won't collapse on me. And I want my surgeons to not read, how to do brain surgery for dummies. I want them to go to school for 12 years.
So you're saying having your phone open to YouTube while you're doing open heart surgery?
That's okay. It says cut here, but don't cut there. Okay, got it. But for those exceptions, of which we need, I think we're actually short on doctors right now. Well, not right now, but there's a pandemic. But in general, there's a lot more need in those STEM fields. But aside of those, you may end up going back to school for whatever you want to do. You might need, but man, really think through before you just throw $50,000, $100,000 away. We talked about the other day, Blake and I, there's the student loan debt for millennials is astronomical. People starting their lives, their marriages was $100,000. If you get I helped a guy that was in his 30s, in his 40s, $250,000 of student loan debt. He went back to school multiple times, and that's great. Mm-hmm. It shows that you're smart if you go back and get PhDs and masters. Again, not hating any of those things. They're necessary sometimes.
But you've got to understand.
Just think through. College is not a guarantee of great success in the corporate world or the business world. Some of the most successful people that in the history of our country didn't have a drop of schooling past the 6th grade. Well, how do they do that? Well, they went to the school of hard knocks, the school of life, the school of – go ahead, Blake.
Oh, I was going to say Rocky dropped out of, high school.
Yeah, look what he did.
Look how that worked out.
But so let me ask you this real quick, Nathan, and Blake, because you both are the experts here. When we're talking about going to school, and I've seen the same thing. I've helped some people with their student loan debt and restructuring that. But people aren't taught about a return on investment. Right? They're told how much their school is going to cost, and they go back and they're told how much more it's going to cost, and they keep being told how much it's going to cost, but they're not told that it's going to take you this many years to break even after you invest that money in this education. And then they're not giving alternatives to something else that might not cost as much, and that you can get a return on it a lot quicker. So how important is that? Because I don't think people really understand that. If you're going to go $250,000 in debt, how many years at the job you're going to be qualified for is it going to take you to break even?
Yeah, I think that's a great. If the problem is, I know that I wasn't smart enough to do this when I was 18. So, it needs to be something probably that parents are doing. But if you were to sit down with a financial advisor at 18 years old and think about college as an investment and literally think about it in terms of ROI, then for most people, it would be a horrible financial decision. Now, like what Nathan talked about, for not for everybody, right? I know, my buddy Adam he went into a lot of debt, made it back really fast because he became a very successful lawyer. And so for people like that, good investment up front. But most people end up going into over $100,000 of debt to come out and make $40,000 a year. And then that debt, you can't just put $40,000 towards paying off the $150 or whatever the debt is, depending on where you went, because you got to live off of it. And so you just end up staying in debt for forever. And obviously there's, debt plans we can put together for that. One of the great things to help a debt plan out, though, is to make more money. And so if you're not in the situation that your education sets you up for, some $200,000 job when you get out, then, it was a bad choice. I think the biggest reason to go to college right now is if you're playing sports. And now that's just me as a coach and an athlete. I think if you're not going to do that or to learn a trade, then you need to put some serious thought, especially when it just comes to the general education, just getting the basics out of the way, because that, you do that anywhere at very low cost.
Let me give you a quick real life example. I know we have, and it's my own example because I learned a lot of things not to do.
Yeah, Nathan went to college for 10 years.
Yeah, a lot of people go to school for 10 years.
They're called doctors.
Yeah, I know. I didn't go for 10 years. It took me 10 years to finish. That's a different story. But no, perfect example. So when I went to college, Blake and I went to the same college for about a year and a half up in Arkansas. And truthfully speaking, I wasn't ready to go to college. I had no business going to college. I went to college. I went for a year and a half, wasted $17,000, got about, I think, 20 credit hours, dropped a lot of classes, didn't go to a lot of classes, didn't do well a lot of classes. And you may say, well, that's because you're a terrible student. Well, that's absolutely true. But why would you? I was not an idiot. I enjoyed socializing. I was not ready for the discipline of college. And that's the truth with a lot of people. But you need to know that. Like, why go do something you know you're going to fail at and waste money on? I mean, you talk about the investment. If you're not ready to do what college takes, well, you're throwing that money. Well, so, every job, I had a bunch of piddly jobs between the next 4 or 5 years. And I'm not telling you, I'm begging you to not take the route that I did. But when I went back to college, in my mind at that time, I was like, well, okay, I just got to get this degree. And there was something satisfying about starting something and finishing something. That there is value to that for sure. But again, that's a cost analysis that you have to look at, the return on investment. So I come out of University of Texas at Dallas with a historical studies degree in history, right? Which I thought I was going to be a teacher. Otherwise, it's a very useless degree. I love it. I have a passion for it. I love history. I think history is one of the most important things you can learn. But the job that I had, my big boy job, my first major job that I had years ago, didn't require a degree. Then I found a job that did require a degree, but then they changed it where they didn't require a degree anymore. So because I got a job in history, well, a degree in history. What does that say? Okay, great. You paid $50,000 for someone to look at your application, your resume, and say, bachelor's, great. Okay, awesome. Well, that's fine, except now I owed $50,000, which is small, really, in comparison to what a lot of people owe. And it takes a long time to pay that off. So for me, the return was terrible. It was nothing. It was like literally throwing money away. I got the education, which I appreciated, but I have every one of my books from history on this bookshelf right here next to me. I could literally buy them all for under $1,000 and read them. I go back and read them a lot. I really have a passion for history. But that degree for me didn't really get me anywhere, right? What Blake and I do could be done irrespective of a degree of any kind. And so that's, again, go to college if you need to go to college. There's some great reasons to go, but just don't think this is the societal path that I have to go down, because you might end up in a lot of debt and a lot of trouble.
Right. Well, guys, I hate to end this. This has been a good one. All of them are good. We had a lot of people watching, had some comments. We really appreciate the comments.
Absolutely.
If you thought this was a good show, please share it. We would appreciate that. These guys are really passionate about reaching the people and helping them get out of the ditch if they feel like they're in one. Obviously, if they don't, then they're happy and they're good, and that's all that really matters. But we got about 1 minute left, and we got to have a hard stop at that 1 minute. I want to give you guys a chance to just say, close us out. But I want to thank everybody for being here. Really appreciate you tuning in to The Difference and to Primetime Live with these guys. Blake, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to let Nathan go first, and then I'm going to bring Blake in, because if I let Nathan go last, we'll run over time. I know we will. Nathan, you're first.
I'm not saying anything. No,
go ahead.
I appreciate the opportunity to jump on and do these shows. And we said it already, but my goal for everyone is that it takes some time to think, what are you giving up from a freedom perspective? I mean, and I do challenge people all the time. Look at look at the government, look at society, look at the things that we're willing to cast off for the perceived illusion of certain securities. And then take a look internally. What are we giving up that we wish that that we're going to look back 3, 4, 5, 10, 30 years down the road and really regret? So just take some time to reassess where you're at.
All right, Blake.
Yeah. So, one of my favorite quotes from a Christian author, his name is John Eldredge. He talks about, actually, I think he's quoting somebody else, but I don't know who he's quoting. He talks about, when you're thinking about what you want to do, don't think about what the world needs. Think about what makes you come alive. Because what the world needs is men who are fully alive. And so, and not just in terms of your career, like I wanted to do something that gave me the quality of life and the freedom to be a great father and to be a great husband, to invest in all these people's lives. And so I think if you're looking for something more, then just, try to to free up your mind, to think outside the box a little bit. If you are interested in starting your own business, we'd love to help you do that. And also, just obviously thanks for tuning in to listen to us. If you did like it, then we would greatly appreciate you sharing this content. So thanks.
All right. Thank you guys.
Thanks,
Appreciate it. And we'll see you guys on the next show.